Hello and welcome to another edition of Off Defense. This week in the studio, I'm joined on defense by Ms. Nadia Segar, former president of Transparency International Guyana. And you're joining us in your capacity as a citizen today with a wealth of knowledge on these things. Sherrod Duncan, who is also joining us today. Mr. Duncan, you're very famous in Guyana. I think many people know you as Captain Clean, Guyana's first superhero. Is that the suit under there? No. We won't tell them at home. You have to keep it secret. We've got Ms. Aruna Budram in the studio with us today. You're also a citizen rep, and I think you're with Transparency International as well. And we've got Ms. Lena Free or Shalina Nagir. And you're with Red Thread, correct, and equally well known to the Guyanese public. I'm happy to have you all in the studio today. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, the reason you guys at home, I'm sure you're looking at the TV screen right now and it probably looks extra bright because I've gathered together some of the most intelligent people that I know and brought us together here for a discussion on a couple of things. Now, in the past few weeks, actually, there's been a lot of talk about this 50% pay increase. There's a 10 to 15% pay increase for government ministers. I think it was the opposition leader, Speaker of the House, parliamentarians, basically. Now, one of the expectations by supporters and general citizens of the coalition government, once they got into power, was that they would experience a large increase in their salary packages. A month or so ago, we were told that this would be, the pay increase would be 5%, which for many people worked out for around $5,000, and some people still didn't get that $5,000. So we were told there wasn't enough money. The Treasury was basically in bad shape. We couldn't afford to pay those people more than the 5%. And here we are, not very long after, and it's just recently been gazetted that the ministers and parliamentarians and have increased their pay up to 50%, which for the Prime Minister means he now will be taking home in excess of $20 million a year, tax-free, paid for by you. It's coming from the taxes that you pay through VAT and your import tax and the like, and compare that to a trainee teacher who's working for a mere $35,000. So following on from that, we had comments from Mr. Joe Harmon, who said that $500,000 was a lowly salary that he even paid people in his private practice. I'm going to start the show off here by saying I actually spoke to someone that worked for Mr. Joe Harmon, and just to use a campaign phrase, Mr. Harmon, you lie. That's what I was told. But we can, you're free to challenge that. We're going to invite somebody from the government to find out. But the staff member told me that's unrealistic, and who can pay $500,000 a month in salary? So this is the discussion I want to have today, and I also want us to look at inequality against the backdrop of things like this. Because on one hand, we have citizens in a society that are earning next to nothing, struggling to survive day to day, yet our government expects those very people to combine their taxes to pay sums of money that will literally make your eye water to people that have literally gotten into office 5 months ago. So opening the floor here, I've invited you folks because I know you are, I follow all of you on Facebook, right? I think you're very clever people, and I've brought you here because I think you guys have social conscience, and this is not the typical name calling or just for political points or like, you guys are humans. So I would like some of your thoughts on this. Let's start with you, Nadia. What were some of your thoughts on this whole issue and how it's played out?
I actually felt really betrayed. I would say that openly that I supported the coalition.
Mm-hmm.
I campaigned in small ways for them. And, when this was announced, I felt that this really went against everything that I thought that they stood for. One of the messages that kept coming out throughout the campaign, the election campaign, was that, the PPP we'd had years of excess and abuse and so on, and that the PPP had been using funds for all sorts of reasons, enriching themselves and so on, and this was not what this coalition was going to be about. I felt strongly that, I could trust them to keep at least,
their
word on that. I mean, it would be naive for me to say I trust any politician or any government, because of course what you say during a campaign is very different from what happens in reality. But I know some of these people, and these people are people I have known professionally and otherwise, and I felt that there was integrity there. To come along now and to say, we make no apologies, they deserve it. Come on, that's really a slap in the face of the people, not just the people who supported you, put you in power, but also the Guyanese people as a whole. We're facing some severe economic downturn at this point in time, and if you are in a position where you can try your best to help alleviate some of the suffering of the people, then you have some sort of moral or ethical obligation to do that.
Mm-hmm.
As a government, I don't expect any government, and certainly not the one that's just come in, a new government, a government that came in promising all sorts of changes, to come along and say, look, we need to take care of ourselves first. Trust us, and we'll, you'll see in the long run that it's about good governance. That's really paternalistic, and actually it's quite condescending and offensive.
It is. It's saying that you probably are not able to think about this logically for yourself. So trust in our logic that this is the right move.
And you're talking to people who've been abused in no short manner for how many years by a government that sought to take care of itself. You're coming to these people and saying, no, we need to take care of ourselves first before we worry about you. But don't worry, we'll
get around to you.
Yeah, that's not acceptable.
Sherrod.
I agree in a sense that I think that it was ill-advised for them to do this so early. I don't think it's any right time anybody would be jumping up saying yes, to a raise in salary for politicians. But I think one of the anomalies that was pointed out in the process, I think is the AG earning more than the Prime Minister. I think that needed to be corrected.
Why not revise the AG salary down rather than up? Because is $18 million as it was before? Is that a pauper's?
There is that too. $80 million per year. But there is that too. What I would like to see now and moving forward is, frankly, as a taxpayer, more bang for my buck. And these ministers have got to work, and have got to work really hard in their respective fields. The young lady said that the economy is in a downturn, and we can't wait 5 years to see that turnaround. We have to see measures in place to stimulate this economy to get it moving. We have to see more persons move from the lower class into the middle class, and programs that can do that on a sustainable basis. We have to see the crime situation remedied and remedied post-haste, because that has a direct impact on business. And where investors and business people don't feel secure and are not secure, then that's not going to argue well for the economy. And so the potential of this government has to become performance. You're being paid extremely well to perform, and you have to perform now. That's my stance.
Aruna, what are your thoughts on this? And bearing in mind as well, right, that as recently as May 22nd of this year, there was an article posted which showed that the salary the then President Donald Ramotar was earning was already, early this year, it was already above the President of Brazil and India. I don't need to tell anyone here how many people are in India. There's around 250 million people in Brazil. Each of those persons pay tax and that and our president was already earning more than these people. Did they really need any much more? I mean, I know a lot of people are wondering at home just what these guys have to buy in their grocery cart now at the end of the month. Is our prime minister eating golden eggs all of a sudden since he assumed the position? And you said good work. We want good work from the ministers. I want us to look at that a little bit, but isn't it the people on the ground that do the work? Is it the ministers? Does the Minister of Health go and do every operation in the hospital? Isn't it the people? What are your thoughts, Aruna? I'm getting the eye at the moment, so I'll ask you to think about that for a couple of minutes. And we're going to be back right after these quick messages for more Off Defense on this issue of the 50% and inequality in Guyana. Back in a second. And we're back in the studio with the Off Defense panel discussion team for this week. We've got Nadia Segar, Chera Duncan, Aruna Budram, and we've got Charlene Nagir with us. Thank you so much. We were just about to hear your point, Aruna, based on what Sharad was saying and what came before. What are some of your thoughts?
Sharad spoke about the crime situation, and to me, the government should have tried to pay their frontline staff immediately and should have tried to increase the pay.
Who are the frontline staff?
I would say the police. Yeah. I would say the nurses, our teachers. Those are the people who have been exclusively mentioned, well, extensively mentioned on the campaign trail. Promises were made to them. They were not empowered. They were not equipped to do their jobs. We now would like a crime-free Guyana, and it seems counterintuitive that the government would not put these people first before themselves. You did mention that it's 5 months. It's just 5 months, and they've started to pay themselves. Actually, it has been. We have to bear in mind that this is something retroactive to July. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at 6 weeks, and I don't know that that's where your priority should be. 6 weeks into it.
It almost seems as you couldn't wait to raise the money, right?
Because it did come up in July, and I think that the overwhelming outcry from the public kind of, led to the effect of them backing down. But then how much have they really backed down if they just came back and made it retroactive to July anyway? So they still decided that they were going to get this one way or another. Now, had it been the graduates that they had supporting them in the ministries, in addition to the frontline staff, I can understand that, because a lot of university graduates are working for $100,000 or even less.
That's
so I
really,
can understand
really
that.
lowly money.
Yeah.
I mean, now that Joe Harmon has given us a proper scale to measure all money by, that's really, really lowly money.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and it's no wonder that a lot of young people seek their CSME certificates as soon as they come out of university, and they will, leave our shores and try to work in other countries. But it's just unfortunate that the government has made this their priority, something that they did not even talk about on the campaign trail.
Okay, so, I mean, against the backdrop of, it's actually 87% of our skilled workforce leaves Guyana, 87%. So when the government is telling you they deserve $20 million a year because they have the most quality ministers, that's because there's 17% of what was left, right? Yeah. From the whole pot of quality, 87% of the pot has gone. So the 13% that is left behind deserve even more of this money. So let me ask you something. Lena, I want to bring you in here, right? I know you talk your story straight. I love that about you. If we're looking at the fact now that, I mean, we heard Mr. Trotman, Raphael Trotman say, trust us, right? I hope I said that correctly. It sounded, when I read it, I felt that there was a lot of feeling it, trust us, right? It sounded genuine, like a politician. So he said, trust us. And I also heard that Mr. Harmon in one of his comments said, because of the quality of people that they're employing to do these jobs, they deserve the money. And that to stem corruption, it's best that you pay the people a good money in advance, above a lowly money, better money, like $1 million and above. What are your thoughts to my response to that, which would be that if this coalition government felt that $500,000 that the last government, who they said were working for super salaries in 2012 and again in 2014, if they said those guys were working for super salaries, but they really, they knew to their hearts that there was lowly money Farah Jagdeo and these guys were working for, haven't they done Guyana a disservice by not recommending a pay increase for the PPP while they were in opposition? What do you make of them all of a sudden just realizing that that money was insufficient to make it through a week on?
Look, Francis, we all know politicians lie.
No.
And,
Lena,
I don't know that.
say it isn't so. Sharon didn't know. I don't think a lot of people at home know that they lie. They didn't expect. I definitely didn't come here expecting that.
Look, I've never voted before the last election. And the only reason I voted in the last election is because I wanted to get rid of the PPP administration.
Because you're fed up with corruption.
Because I feel they had just raped the public treasury and, just abused Guyanese citizenry for a very long time. And so I voted for change, which is what we were told we were getting. But instead, it seems like we just exchanged one set of bandits for another set.
But this set of bandits, don't you think they're more clever? Because here's what. Here's why. The last set of bandits, we call it stealing because they were taking some of their lowly money out of the salary that they were getting. And they were stealing some through kickbacks and the like. This government is telling us to prevent that, let's sign the money that they were going to steal into their paycheck. So give them what they were going to steal. Isn't that like sticking us up on the road, jacking up the country, and holding us at ransom?
Yes, it's the same. It's the very same thing. And the example and the message that that's sending to other people, other workers, other public servants, it's a very dangerous message because it says that you're not going to get quality service unless you pay a super salary. And to me, the part that hurts the most, and that's the most disappointing, is, they talk about being public servants. And I think we need to remember that politicians are public servants, just like the teachers.
But could you break that down for people that don't understand? Because we have this, we idolize people in Guyana, politicians especially. Can you break down what you mean by public servant, like these guys are supposed to be our servants? Treat me like I'm just stupid here.
Right,
they're here to serve the people.
Right.
We elect them, we put them in power.
So you mean
they're not born with any supernatural powers? They're people just like all of us. Like you said, they're not using golden toilet paper.
You don't know. I've not seen in Mr. Nagamutu's toilet.
We all are. On the needs, we're all the same. We have the same basic needs. And when we vote, right, we give them part of our power, which we have as people. We entrust some power with them and elevate them we say, we give you power to run
it's like
certain
saying, take care of this for me, right?
Right.
Trust is important.
Right,
We don't give, we entrust.
Right, but they have to realize that comes from the people. And the people of Guyana, especially poor people of Guyana, I mean, you talk about the people, university graduates, people who are able to migrate, that's a percentage of the population. I mean, people who are able to migrate and pay and go to UG, those are lucky and the well-off, or the ones who scrape and have a lot of people supporting them. I'm more concerned about the poor people, grassroots people, who can't even think about UG, can't even think about migrating, don't have those options available to them, right? So pensioners, people on public assistance who are getting $6,500 a month. What can you do with $6,500 in this economy? You can't. No, $6,500 is what it's raised to. Yeah. That's what it's raised to. And these are people who are often with some disability or some injury, some illness that can't work, even if they may be qualified, or maybe they worked for a time and then they got injured on the job. And so pensioners who are getting $17,000 a month, again, people who've worked and, maybe the employers haven't paid NIS for a long time. People might not have a quality education, so don't know how to fill out the paperwork, or if they're working for themselves. There are people who, there are lots of reasons, who are injured and didn't get justice, laid off, all kinds of things, right? So if we are not taking care of the most vulnerable and the most needy people in our population, you're not doing your job as a politician and as a public servant. So yeah, I agree. Teachers, policemen, doctors, nurses all need to get paid more as well. But your priorities, this just shows very clearly what the priority of this new government is. And, we've suffered enough. We've had enough of arrogant politicians. And I think people who voted, we really wanted and expected a change, and just getting, an exchange, and in a way even worse because of how soon how this has happened, without any evidence that things we look around and we see the place is cleaner, but public services are still, of poor quality. The crime situation, there's still endemic corruption. We are not at a place where this salary increase is warranted at all.
Again, I agree with that. But I like to look at the glass half full too.
Well, yeah, 50% full. That's your percentage. Glass is 50% full.
Maybe they'll go for the other 50 soon.
It has lots of opportunities because I think we can now say that we want our public service to be paid better. That 5% raise, or how much of it was raised, needs to be raised more than that, right?
Okay.
Also, I saw one of the labor unions leaders saying that we can only come to the negotiating table using your 50% as a benchmark. We can only start from there. And I think I agree with that also, that you can't raise your salary by 50% to avoid your ministers from stealing. Raise my own 5% and don't think you'll have pilferage in the ministries and those other places. We have to, not you, we have to pay people properly. Teachers, as you said, and our servicemen and women, our frontline people, and those behind the scenes also, we have to pay our people well.
But don't you think $500,000 a month in Guyana is proper pay? Do you agree that that's lowly money?
I don't have all the figures.
Given in mind also
all the other perks that they
Can I just say that
relative.
the ministers, I just want to cite the Prime Minister, 67 years old, I believe. I thought the Prime Minister would have been doing some pro bono work in
work at this point.
So we talk about, we've had all this press about, the ministers deserve it, this is the work that they're going to have to do, and trust us and all this, and we're going to see in the long term. But let's come back to what is a really fundamental point. You're a public servant. You put yourself forward to work on behalf of the people of this country. This is why you became involved in politics. This is why you campaigned. This is why you went all over the country telling people that you were the good guys, that you were here to look after the people's interests, to lift us out of some of the problems that we've been in, and to do better. You can't now come along and say, oh, guess what? What you're going to pay me wasn't good enough. I need more than that to do my job. Well, we didn't ask you to take on that job. And I think Red Thread pointed out, representatives wrote a letter, and there was a really nice paragraph in that letter when they said, you put yourself forward. If you didn't, then there would have been other people who were willing to put themselves forward to work for this country. And there are a lot of people out there who are willing to serve this country for
Next to nothing.
The current government are claiming is not enough. And I think that is what really hurts people at this point.
There are lots of quality people already doing quality work without getting the super
But they don't get that kind of money. Yeah. We must go to a break. Quickly, we're going to come back to you just now. And I want you guys at home, while we're on this break, to just think of how much egg ball and puri you could buy with that much money a month. With sour. Back in a minute. So we're back at Off Defense. Hopefully you figured out that it will be many, many egg ball and puri with a lot of extra sour, as the guest did. Yeah, with 50% more money on what the ministers were already earning. So, I mean, Lena, how about we expand the discussion, let's see, and bring in these opposition members? Because as Nadia said earlier, it's a very luxurious position to be in. To be able to criticize these guys who just stepped out and be able, because the opposition leader is getting 50% extra on top of a salary that used to make me open the paper and gawk. Because the size, now I don't have a problem with anyone having a nice house or a pension, right? But if a school teacher that literally taught hundreds of children in her career that went on to be lawyers, doctors, all around the place, if a school teacher can't live properly, if I'm meeting old school masters on the road, as I have done, that tell me they're homeless, they can't collect pension for another 5 years, and right? And you got a president that those same poor people, put in a mansion. Isn't it ironic? What's the deal there? How is it that the bandits are now able to say, look, other bandits? That must be the best thing as a bandit, to look and say, look, another crook.
Yeah. Well, it's not just ironic, it's also, again, going back to the fact that, you're setting the same example. Nothing has changed.
Nothing different.
People are still seeing the big ones in power taken for themselves and screwing the poor people. And so, inequality, the haves and the have-nots, the data actually shows that there's an increase. The gap is increasing. The rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer. And the middle class is getting more and more eroded.
Down quickly, right? Because if you imagine two scales, I'm going to do a graphic for this show that hopefully we can overlay right down here. But if you were to imagine, on one end of the scale, we got a split society in Guyana. On one end of the scale, let's start with the lowly money, right? 100,000 going down to ultimate lowly, like at 35,000, because not everybody's getting the minimum wage. Let's be honest about that. We have that area there. We have governments that come to us, successive governments, whether it's the PPP or the APNU coalition, that come to us and they say, Guyanese citizens, we are honest, we are working class, we have working class origins, whether we come from Ububak Dam or Wim, or we come from Babu John, we are as working class as you are, we feel your struggle, we know what it is like to go hungry, right? So we think we're voting for people just like us, that know the struggle, that are poor like us, that are going to help us when they get over the fence. But what we often are finding is that when we help these people over the fence, they run ahead and leave us to our own devices. And the society we have is one where you have the 35,000, the 20,000, the no 1,000, because we have 40% unemployment among our youth. You have those people, and on the other end, you have now junior ministers starting at $11 million a year, going up to 20 million. Who else is in that bracket? Drug dealers, right? And the corporations. So our ministers, rather than trying to align themselves with the working class and grassroots, align themselves more often with drug dealers, the big moneyed corporate classes. So whose interest is the country being run in?
But I think on the whole, I think that, again, we have to move more people from poverty into that middle class bracket. But I think as long as you have...
But you believe this trickle-down economics thing is...
You put yourself through school, you work hard, you should be able to live comfortable in your own country without having to go overseas or anything like that. Also, I believe that the whole issue of raising salaries for that 17%, 50%, was ill-timed.
No. You say ill-timed as if it was a good idea if it came a month later.
It's never going to be. I don't see a future when we're all going to be cheering if we say we want to raise the salary of our politicians. But I'm backing you, and I'm for the point again where we pay people properly, especially teachers and policemen and our service people. I have a grandparent, I have a grandmother, and had a grandfather who taught for years in this country and couldn't build a house till they were probably over 60, 70. right? Something is wrong with that. I don't want to be in a country, and coming back to the notions of teachers, while a government minister could probably build a house in the next 3 years, based on their current salaries and perks and all of that, while the people who are doing most of the work get least of the pay. I have no issue with you earning well if everybody else earns well also. But when you are going to run ahead, as you have clearly said, in front of lots of the other people
Not
who
run,
work equally, race ahead of lots of people who work equally as hard and sometimes more hard than you are working. I have a serious issue with that, where most of our young people to do well, to live comfortable, have to go overseas. I have relatives who are nurses, who are qualified nurses, who live overseas, and when I go and see how they live as nurses overseas,
you're shocked.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked. They're able to put their children through university. They're able to drive, buy vehicles for their children. Why
even teachers?
Even teachers.
Teachers. You're
Even
bringing up the
teachers.
nation. You're teaching the nation.
Right? So again, I believe that the promises that have been made have to move to performance. Right? That we can say that we don't have it any longer. And this government has to perform. We are paying our ministers extremely well, and they have got to perform.
No, and this.
I'm glad that
Go on.
Sharad, sorry, I'm glad that you've now moved from timing to the fact that this is unacceptable. I think we've moved in terms of our understanding of the issue, and that's a big deal for me, because I didn't think the issue was timing, and I think the issue was further compounded with the contempt at which it was justified. Not just the trust us, but we deserve it. Absolute contempt that was very dominant in the previous government is what we're seeing today, and it is really soon to be
it's what they got
that,
thrown out for.
right? And the other point that you mentioned was, the tying of compensation with performance. However, it has taken a long time for professionals to establish the relationship between performance and, compensation and performance. And compensation is not something that, those who work in the private sector would know that you just don't mess with compensation, because you want to stratify the executive or the management and executive levels. You don't exist in an ideal state where money is available to just pack on at the senior tiers, but just leave the others there. So that is a very idealistic situation where you would try to increase your own salary so that you would establish the clearly defined compensation tiers. In fact, if anything, I would have supported the recruitment of a consultant that was specially employed by the government for the purpose of compensation and remuneration design, and to ensure that that is tied to performance and ensure that performance is actually measured after a period of time. I don't think the government has gone through that process. It was basically, this is what we think is best. This is how we think we are going to perform. And so let's just give ourselves a raise. I don't think it works like that. And I don't think it works like that when you're spending our money.
But then we come back to the whole paternalistic issue, and we know best, and we're telling you what we're going to do, and you should listen to us. And I'd like to raise 2 points: the issue of poor, the very poor, and in Guyana we've got layers of poor.
We got
We've
layers
just got
of very
layers
poor,
of poor.
right?
And let's not forget that the middle class are not professionals only. The middle class are people who work in those banks and various organizations and who live paycheck to paycheck. They're paying a mortgage, they're paying for their car rental or whatever.
But if they get sick and
if they
miss
get
one
sick
or
or if they lose their jobs, they're just like every other poor person. So we shouldn't get caught up in this thing about all these classes of people. They're just layers of poor. That's all there is in Guyana. And I can't see that a country with 750,000 people, sorry, I might be simplistic here, but 750,000, that we should all not be enjoying a decent standard of living
With all the resources
with
that
what we
yes.
have.
I agree
So
with that.
I cannot accept any government that comes along and says, look, we need to look after us first and then we will take care of you. That's just not acceptable. And to say, to pay your ministers so that you can, so that they will not steal or to be, to be corrupt, is to say that they lack some level of some integrity, that they lack integrity. That's what you're saying. You're saying we have to pay them so they can't thief. Well,
It's
come
being
on.
ironic,
Who
isn't
are
it?
these
It's
people?
saying like we got people of good quality, But we need to pay them so they don't rob you guys.
You know, I mean, what are the messages that you're sending to the public? They're all these mixed messages.
You know, it sounds like the government, is like a protection racket that mafia is running you, right? You need protection from these guys, you call us, right? And then the other guys start abusing you, someone else walks in. But so no harm comes to you, you have to pay your way, right? So we have to pay them their exorbitant pay increases.
Let's take the Prime Minister's. We come back to him because I think that stands out as quite glaring. You move from a salary of approximately 18 to 20, over 20 million per year. How does your life change with that increase? What were you not enjoying at 18 million per year that you're now able to access at 20 and more per year? I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous, and I think that they deserve to be condemned for that. I don't want to hear, personally, anybody apologizing and saying, oh, you know, professionals need to be paid and governments need to be paid to do their job. No, you put yourself forward to do this work for the benefit of your country. Yes, you get your remuneration, but it should be linked to what everyone else is getting.
And to what the country is generating, to what the economy is generating.
Exactly.
Because now it appears that you've killed the proverbial goose with the golden egg, and you wanted all this increase, but then where's the money going to come from?
You didn't kill the goose with the golden egg, right? You wrung its neck, stole the egg, and chuck it in a bush, right? And gave it 5%.
What I'm concerned about, again, as we've been talking about, is the message that comes out. Because if you're saying to me that that you need X amount to prevent you from stealing, if that's one of the rationales, then what are you saying to the ordinary person who didn't get 50%?
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
Hopefully they're not saying everyone at home should start stealing if you're not getting below, if you're not getting above $500,000 a month. Can I stay here though? Because I think we have to go to a break quickly. But I got some more papers with me. I did some research last night. Over the last week, really.
I'm surprised by that.
You're surprised? You think I just know all this stuff off my head, Sherrod? So it's always good to do research, right? So in the course of this reading, I was very interested in inequality, as always, and what kind of data exists on inequality. And I stumbled across a few reports, one of them being from the World Bank, an assessment done by the World Bank where they took data from 39 different countries and they looked at all these indicators, and they were able to conclude. There are a few studies I copied for reference, but this one here, I basically broke everything down into headings, and maybe we think about this and have a discussion when we come back from the break. So I'll read it for you guys at home. Right. So there is strong empirical data to suggest bigger income gaps in society lead to deteriorations in, and we could do this as a checkbox. Just tick if you think Guyana applies, right? It leads to deteriorations in social relations, child conflict, homicide, imprisonment, social capital, trust, human capital, right, where child well-being is worse, high school dropouts increase, math and literacy scores decrease, social mobility decreases, the number of teenage births goes up, drug abuse goes up, there's more infant mortality, life expectancy goes down, mental illness increases, obesity increases. Just think about that. Yeah. This data, not even from Guyana, taken from societies that are more unequal. And you can literally see, while we've been spending time fighting teenage pregnancy, drug abuse, infant mortality, every single thing on this list, we could have been tackling inequality, and we thought we had the government to do that. We'll be back in a minute after these quick messages. Okay, welcome back to Off Defense. We are once again joined in studio. This is the final wrap-up segment by Nadia Segar, former president of and one of the founding members of Transparency International Guyana, Sherrod Duncan, Mr. Clean, or Captain Clean, as I love to call him, and well known to the Guyanese public for being vocal on a number of matters. I think you're like a good sort of pot salt. We've got a lot of pot salt in here today. We've got Miss Aruna Budram, also a member of Transparency Institute Guyana, but you're representing us today as the citizen rep with a very sharp mind, also with tremendous wit and intelligence and some eyebrows. I see the eyebrows. Is Ms. Charlene Nagir. Thank you so much once again, guys, and you're joining us from Red Thread. In case I didn't say that, but you're well known for being active in a number of areas. If there's a protest or something about human rights, civil rights, right? I don't want to cast you as a protester, but if there's anything to do with justice and human rights and the like, I often will see your name tagged on behind there or at the front of the line trying to lead the crowd on. So before we went to the break, I was reading out some of the interesting facts I found on inequality and different things that inequality increases in society, like the teenage pregnancy, mental health, drug abuse, decreases child well-being, and the like. It sort of sounded like a menu for Guyana. Yeah, what were your thoughts on that? And us moving in the other direction, where I think we all thought we were headed a few months ago, towards closing that gap. Because what scares me now is, as comments were made by you guys, okay, if everyone now thinks they have a lowly salary and they need to get theirs, 3 in 5 people in our Caribbean region, according to an article by Sir Ronald Sanders, are young people, right? And we're the most vulnerable, young people are the most vulnerable group. You see wealth gap opening up, it's literally sitting on a time bomb because people start to get frustrated and take things into their own hands. What do you see as some of the steps we can take to really definitively start to climb our way out of this very, very deep hole?
I think the government needs to get out of the echo chamber. Prior to elections, they were very interested in what young people had to say. They were listening to our voices in all sorts of non-traditional media, social media, and they were responding to that, and they were actually actively formulating their campaign strategy based on some of the needs expressed by young people. I think today it's unfortunate that the only real democratic space that exists still remains outside of the fences of the ministries and not necessarily on their websites or on their Facebook pages. There aren't open forums where you can actually voice your opinion. Yes, you can voice it on Facebook, but who's reading that, right? So I really thought the government would have come into the 21st century, into the year 2015, and opened their ministries to social media and have their websites well developed and have a space where these conversations can take place. And yeah, and take that in. I mean, the parliament.gov website is actually a nice way where we've seen that happen. But whether our comments have actually been analyzed and distilled and have been moved into action, we don't know that. But the ministries are not open to hearing what young people have to say. And it's not just young people. Anyone who has the ideas on how to bridge the inequality. As Charlene said, the disparity between the classes is getting larger. And for us to really counter that, I think the government needs to understand that they don't have all the answers. And they need to start providing a forum so that these ideas can actually be out there.
I heard about a system that was being used in Colombia. No, it's Argentina.
Argentina.
Yeah. I think you were the person that shared that. You want to talk about that before I go into it?
No, go all right. It's just about voting on issues. They experimented with trying to get young people involved in sharing their ideas on issues and actually registering young people's positions on issues through a vote, an online medium. And I know that when I posted it, a lot of people thought it was really idealistic, well, that's not Guyana, and so on, and didn't have a phenomenal response in terms of percentage of the electorate, but they did have, I can't remember.
They got a seat, they got,
yeah,
a seat
they
in
did.
Parliament and they represent, but to break it down, right? Because I was so excited when I saw that link. Because I often talk about a system very similar.
Yeah.
I just didn't know it existed, right? So the premise of the argument is that government as it is was created for a society that existed hundreds of years ago, right? We're talking before the internet, before mobile phone communication. So in order for someone to find out what Sherrod wants with his society, they have to send a letter which got come by a carriage on a horse, right? It might blow out. You might never get to cast your vote. So people are like, you know what? We have a large territory to maintain. We need people that can make decisions in our interests on our economy and stuff to do with trade and all the like. So we're going to invest our trust, as you said, in a certain number of people, representatives of the people, who will make decisions on our behalf, and then they will then communicate it to us. This is the old archaic system. Now we have the internet, and under this system, you had to wait 5 years or so before you could change those people. So what's happened in the political class around the world, a lot of scamps have made their way towards Parliament, because they know once they get in there and sit down, these guys could even say, yo, we're going to pay each other $100 million each and gazette it. And we'd have 5 years for them to earn money until we could change it. So some of the new ways of thinking about government and reimagining what society could be, I think we should always be reimagining and creating in our minds what the better tomorrow could look like. Some of these are saying that, like the Argentinian folks, we have Facebook, we have YouTube, we have mobile phones with texting on them. Why is it every single citizen can't have a say in their affairs? Why can't we use an app to vote on whether we want X amount of money to be spent on a road? Why couldn't the public vote on whether the ministers deserve this increase if it's our money, right? Everything else to do with us, they love it. Our money, they love our money. Our votes, they love our votes. Our opinion to help them win the votes and get our money, they love it. But once they get in the door, it doesn't seem to matter whether, as some commentator said, is red and green dotishness or red and yellow, whatever, different dotishness, right? Don't you think it is time we started utilizing available technologies? Because if the government is happy to use these technologies to set up websites for the convention center and all these things, it seems they have technical people. Don't you think we should start moving, or at least thinking?
I agree that technology has to bridge some of the communication gaps that we used to have. But also, it's a small country that we have, and our government
so it should be
has
easier.
to begin to engage people also beyond just on Facebook and all that, because when they were campaigning, they could find themselves, in different areas and really talk to you one-on-one. I mean, I was in so many meetings with Mr. Granger, I'm not close to the center where power is prior.
I don't know
Yes,
if
but-
Mr.
but
Granger's
it-
on
it-
the
it-
But
road
we begin
anymore.
to continue to engage people. We have a very small country, and it's not very difficult. But what I wanted to add to that is the fact that I think that it's too early to write the government off. We still have a year and a half in front of us.
We haven't written them off.
Like most people, allow me to finish.
I'm sorry, Cheryl. Go on, brother.
That we can judge any person or any government by one moment in time, the entire five years. But adding to that also, that we have to continue to pay our people well, and again move those people that we have, and lots of them, all those layers of poverty, into more of the middle class, into more of the
But isn't the middle class keep moving if the people at the front of the line keep boosting themselves by 50%, while those of us at the back?
Yeah,
because earlier you were talking about 50.
Francis,
hold on,
it's a tremendous misstep. It's a tremendous.
Hold on, you were talking about earlier about like if they get 50%, we should get 50%. But let me tell you, there's a big difference in 50% of $6 million and 50% of $35,000.
The dollar value.
That
just
is a huge difference. And if we even talk about get into economic terms like purchasing power, parity and the like, this is unconscionable. But I invite and I am happy that you can play devil's advocate in that way. Lena, what was your point?
No, in addition to what Sharon said about government engaging people post-election, I think we, the people, should also not be afraid to engage the government. Remember, they are working for us, and we also have, a role to play. And so to that effect, I wanted to let people know, all the listeners, that Red Thread has convened and is continuing to convene a series of actions. We're going to be picketing outside Office of the President Tuesday coming.
Which is which date?
It's, today is what?
Well, we're airing this. We're going to be airing this on a Sunday, so it'll be
on the
2 days from now.
The 20th.
20th.
On
20th
Tuesday,
of
October
October.
20th at 12:30 outside OP. That's when Cabinet is meeting. And then we're also going to be outside Parliament on the 22nd, again starting at 12:30, when all the members of Parliament are going to be convening.
We'll come down and meet the defense team.
At 12:30 both times. Yeah, so it's an opportunity for people to engage with their elected public servants and remind them of who you are and who they are and what you expect. So it's a two-way street. It's
but
not just a one-way street.
before you go, I want you to outline, Lena, very quickly, the importance of protest. I think we've lived in the last couple of decades where our very understanding of a protest action has been reconfigured. And many in our society see it as something that is wholly negative. You're being an upstart. Why do you think, it's not like you go in there to cause violence or anything, but why do you think it's important people just in a show of solidarity or whatever, come together and say, okay, we are unhappy about this, as opposed to venting on Facebook? What difference do you think that makes?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a whole other show, Francis, actually. I mean, it's a topic we can talk about forever. But I think there are things, like we talked about social media and engaging people at different levels. But for me, it's not just protest, it's just standing up for whatever you believe in and not being afraid to speak out.
But isn't that technically a protest action?
No, because protesting is protesting against, but it could also be you're standing for something.
But
so
are
it's
you
not
standing
just
for the
negative.
salary increases?
No, I'm standing for people, for all Guyanese people to have a quality life. I'm standing for equity. I'm standing for, performance based on real measurable standards. So you're standing for things as well.
Okay,
not just against. But another thing, just one final point about things that we could be doing to reduce the inequality. You talked about that earlier. I think we need to be not just paying people more, but investing investing in industries. If people with all this money, both in the private sector and the government sector, if they invest some of their super salaries in building and creating industries which will employ people, right? We have 40% unemployment for young people. So take some of that super salary getting and open a factory. You have all these natural resources. We have so many things. Instead, we're importing a lot of things which we can be producing right here in Guyana.
Doesn't that create a secondary inequality where we create then the class of business owners and the new proletariat who work for them, the people with the salaries that enable them to buy 4 houses a year in the space of time it takes you to buy a gate?
But we need work for people, right? We have lots of UG graduates who cannot get work. They're not the industries we talked about, chemists earlier, qualified, brilliant minds, Guyanese, but end up migrating because there's no work for them.
People
here,
assume everyone
right?
that's unemployed doesn't
doesn't
have
want
an
to work,
education,
and
they don't want to
that's
work,
not
they're
true,
lazy. I hear that all the
Well,
time.
the president has been talking a lot about entrepreneurship, and I always read. But what we're talking about, going back to the land and farming, if you're on, driving from Naikiri to Paramaribo in Suriname, you see all these colored bags, and they come and they pick up whatever the produce is on certain days, and they take it to the marketplace. We need to put simple systems in place where if we are indeed encouraging entrepreneurship, we do not expect that people have to go out and find market for their goods, right? So if you are planting bananas, your bananas should be picked up. If you're planting rice, I certainly don't expect every rice farmer to get on the internet and try to sell their rice. It's absolutely ridiculous. The government needs to understand their role in this. They want to operate like the private sector. They want to be paid like the private sector. So I expect that they would be hiring business development strategists in order to strategize how exactly do we get markets and how exactly do we take the produce into another country. What can we do? To add value to existing crops. How do we, organic produce and certifications, organic certification, things like that. I would expect that the government is truly supporting entrepreneurship by putting the infrastructure in place to get those goods to the market. I don't see that happening. I don't see a plan for that happening. So yes, I agree with Lena, industry, but we also need to really, truly support entrepreneurship.
Beautiful. Any final comments from you?
The thought I wanted to add, something that I said earlier about the government taking into consideration what is being said now and so on. And even while I agree that government needs to really and truly engage the populace more, people must have more access to the president, the media and the common man also, and the ministers. They are without excuse as we hear this with this the 50% increase in their salaries and all of that. But what I wanted to say that from where I sit at a communication level within government, I see lots of what is said on social media coming through, because there are discussions that are held on that. You might want to argue about how much policies change and all of that by it. But I do see lots of consideration being given to what the public say on this matter internally. I see a lot of thought being put into what persons say and person's point of view, as again saying why is he saying that, and we can try to shut him up and so on, but taking those things into consideration.
Is there a structured way in which that happens, or can they just pick and choose who they want to listen to? And that's what I'm talking about. Public engagement does not necessarily mean that the right people, or you're actually listening to the entire spectrum of opinions.
But what I'm saying also is that, and that's why I'm saying it must engage the common man, because there's some of us who are always going to be more militant, who are always going to be on Facebook chatting up or in a protest or something like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that represents 75% of the country, how they feel about this matter. And that is where it comes down to exactly what you were saying, that systems got to be put in place in which we vet these ideas, we test them with the public. But also, I'm kind of losing my trail of thought. But the greater point I wanted to make that is there's some consideration with the last point, that this is the kind of democracy I think I want to live in, where there's always this, not necessarily a conflict of ideas, but there's always this this back and forth, that if government feels that they want to do X, the population has that right to come out and, as we say, whether in solidarity or in protest, to go against that or to add to it. I think it is important for our democracy. It is more than important as against an issue like crummy wing, where if you go and you protest, you feel the government is going to watch you, they're tapping your phone or something like that. I think it's an important moment that we have as a nation, if we use it correctly.
Yes, I think there's a small consolation to say I can feel more safe protesting now, if in either case they don't do anything with your recommendations.
But Francis, let's be honest that every time we say no, the government isn't going to bend. How are they going to move their agenda forward? We are not going to agree with the government 50%.
What happened to our agenda? What happened to our agenda?
But I'm saying we
don't have much time here, though. Yeah. So we'll have to probably take this up in another program. Right now, you're saying the knife that feels like it's in my back may only be in 50%. I'm not going to wait for them to plunge it in 100. What are your final thoughts, Nadia, if you want to take us away?
I think Lena touched on it. My feeling is always that ultimately it's the people. It comes down to the people. Governments are there to serve the people, and we must always maintain that as a guiding principle how we move forward. It worries me, and I don't want to live in a democracy where I hear a government minister say that I make no apologies for taking this action, or that you act in a way that is opaque and unquestionable. I don't want to live in that democracy. That's the same democracy we were fighting against with the previous administration. And I certainly will be fighting that again this time if there is evidence that that is going to be the case. So I would like Guyanese people to always bear in mind, and this is something we lose. We lose it in our racism, our sexism, our hate for one another, that ultimately we are all people. We're all Guyanese people. We're all struggling for the same thing. We all want a decent life. And we must hold government and each other accountable. That's all I have.
Ms. Nadia Segar, Shara Duncan, Aruna Butram, Shalina Nadir, I'd like to thank you very much for joining me in studio today. I think anyone that looked at this program would have heard enough to leave them thinking for at least the next week. But I hope it's enough to make you at home participate or inspire you to be active in some way. The word that keeps popping up is service. And perhaps we as a society need a reintroduction to this concept, what it means to selflessly serve others with their best interests at heart instead of your own. That's what it is to take a country of people who are wearied and tired from corruption, from the yoke of corruption around their necks, to one where people feel more liberated to enjoy their lives and fulfill their potential as Guyanese the best they can, enabled and supported by a caring state. So I think we couldn't end on more beautiful words than we just heard from you. So I think that'll wrap it up for today. I wish you all a better life for all Guyanese. Have a good day.